Greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. Great to be here again, and very nice to have a chance to catch up with Dai Henwood. How are you, Dai?
I am wonderful, slipping easily into week 5 of lockdown level 4, and just been spending it doing all sorts of things, learning how to crimp Cat 6 cables, crawling under the
Such a
house
geek.
to uh, crawling under the house to hardwire my son's Xbox in so he gets less latency in Fortnite. And unfortunately, the only place I haven't got a cable to yet is my little shed where I work from. So that's next on the cards.
Okay. Well, we'll see how your Wi-Fi holds up. And I hope you've locked it down well, so there's not too many neighbours that are jumping on your Wi-Fi.
I keep it pretty tight.
One of the surprises I had, and there's a whole lot we want to talk about today. Starlink from SpaceX that I've been kicking the tires on over the last few days. There's a bit of news from Apple, as tends to happen at this time of year. So we definitely want to drill in on that. A few scams going on. There's a SpaceX launch that's just actually I've got to check the stream on that, see what's been happening, and some as a bit of a technology partnership on a nuclear scale between Australia, US, and UK, literally. And some stuff in the entertainment world from a tech perspective. So lots to delve into. But first up, Starlink, and for those that have been following this or that haven't been following it, this is all about getting internet connectivity to really the furthest parts of the earth, including the deepest and furthest parts of New Zealand. Although I see we're not quite we're getting down to Stewart Island, but not quite so far as our most east islands there. So yeah, a little way to go, but mostly it looks like Starlink have got this as really impressive coverage around New Zealand. The speed tests I've done, you're typically getting 200 to 300 megabits per second download speeds, and about a tenth of that in terms of upload speeds, which you could compare those to sort of base fiber plans. But going back to the thing about neighbours stealing Wi-Fi, I noticed as it comes out of the box, it's very unusual in that the Starlink Wi-Fi is open with no password. It's a bit of a shock in this day and age.
Absolutely, I quite like that. Those speeds you're saying sort of are a lot higher than the reports I've been reading from people who are trialing it in the US, who seem to be getting more around the 20 or 30 down and sort of around 5 or 6 up. How have you found it in terms of latency and in terms of it? I've heard that the latency tends to spike about 10 times an hour, which would make it quite hard for actually doing any high quality video streaming.
Yeah, look, mine is not the perfect use case because I'm sitting in Auckland. Where I set it up initially was just in the middle of my driveway, so that was the 2-minute setup. I got this box, and I'm thinking it's no good in the box. I want to see it working. Dropped it in the middle of the driveway, cable inside. They give you basically one little box that you plug your jug cord into that powers it. That then sends off power over a Ethernet cable and data communications. PoE presumably, power over the cable, power and data. Off to the satellite dish. The satellite dish then orientates itself accordingly, points it up at the up to the stars, towards the relevant satellites, of which we know there's well over 1,500 that are up there now. I think probably 90% odd of them are active, and that also comes with a router you plug it into. But what I see is quite a few people are using their own router or firewall to have a lot more control. It's a pretty simple one that it comes with. Latency, yeah, that's an interesting one. Most of the time I found it quite reasonable, but because of where we are and the dish isn't able to move in all directions properly, and so I think at one point the app was saying, and I'm sure this would be better if I attached it to the top of the roof. It was saying that I could get interruptions to service every 3 minutes. So that wasn't actually my real world
which
experience.
is quite a lot.
Yeah. My real world experience wasn't that bad, but it definitely. Actually, I found the best positioning was sitting on top of the Tesla. In terms of my quick places to drop it. So yeah, it was an interesting photo opportunity. Tesla with a satellite dish on it.
Could not be any more 2021 pandemic than having your satellite internet on top of your electric car. Part of me really doesn't like Starlink because I love the night sky, and due to the sort of bizarre, massive global unregulation of satellites, it seems, there's so many companies chucking satellites up in the air, and I believe they're looking at throwing another 10 to 30,000 up over the coming years, which is a huge amount, and it's a massive sacrifice in terms of the night sky for people who enjoy going out to the beach and looking up, and you just sort of see these dystopian, unnatural lines of satellites tracking around.
How often have you seen them?
In summer, you sort of see them every night, almost. Depends if we're down on the. I mean, this is when I'm either out at Piha or down on the Coromandel, where you've got a lot of less light pollution. Haven't really seen them when I'm in town. And I know I follow a lot of astronomers and nighttime photographers on Twitter, and I know there's a lot of anger within those communities. But then it's the yin and yang of everything. There is the benefit of bringing, the middle of the African desert can get good internet, in terms of it just now, I suppose, in this age of remote work, it also means that now people can dial in and actually pull away from living in the city. They could get their little rural spot. And I mean, I don't know if you would find this, but maybe if you're in a rural spot and you can actually place that box somewhere where it does have more access in terms of the middle of a field or something like that, and it's not obstructed, whether it would actually get better service.
Oh, yeah. I mean, certainly the consistency, what I'm hearing from folks that are using this and really where it's most suited to, it's not suited to locations where you can get fiber. I'll say that now. If you can get ultra fast broadband, if you get fiber to your home, that's it. That's the gold standard. That's the most reliable thing. The bit that causes issues is the Wi-Fi between, where your fiber comes into the house and where you're sitting on Wi-Fi elsewhere. What you've done, Dai, for your son's gaming and so on, that's absolutely perfect. If you can run Ethernet to sort of key locations, then you get the best results. I've sort of repositioned a few times during these lockdowns, and I'm in a position now where I'm limited by Wi-Fi, and the large majority of us are. And in fact, that's one of the interesting things with the Starlink app. You can fire it up and do these tests. It'll do a speed test at the router and tell you what speed it is there. And I heard some people getting over 300 megabits a second there, but then, based on the Wi-Fi and where their positioning is, they might be getting, 50 megabits on their device. So I've certainly had over 200 megabits down and quite close to 30 up, 25 or 20, maybe 28 up from a device, but your Wi-Fi. So you've got two factors. Is that connection to you, and then once you've got it to you, is spreading it around your devices.
But fine. I mean, for me, to be honest, good internet is like the lost ark of the covenant. Like I have spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars on various router situations from Orbi mesh networks. Currently, I've just set up on the Nighthawk, Netgear Nighthawk mesh network, which
nice,
very user friendly to set up, and it's actually been delivering good speeds throughout the house. But then Wi-Fi is this elusive thing. Like sometimes you're holding all your Wi-Fi in a cup, and then the cup turns into a sieve, and it just disappears, and then it comes back because, of course, it's traveling. We're not in direct line of sight to everything. There's walls and beams and that, but it is something that, even though like this Wi-Fi I'm on at the moment is Wi-Fi 6, it's technically I've got Spark Chorus Fiber coming to the house, and yeah, I'm the same. Like I run my speed tests, and when I'm next to the router, it's humming, and the cable is humming, and then it's just the Wi-Fi seems to just be a mixed bag, and also I suppose it comes round of. Then if suddenly other family members start streaming, and I might get pushed down the allocation list, or it's something that I'll be intrigued to see, especially as pressures mount around this lockdown sort of situation, which might move to more people remotely working from home or remotely working from home for more days. There is going to be more demand for high quality video conferencing. I know in terms of doing comedy, we've tried to record versions of 7 Days and so forth, and it's not really worked purely because of latency. Comedy needs direct communication, and just even that, and I'm just talking split-second latency.
Wow. Yep.
So no, it's going to be intriguing to see if that's something that can be fixed over time.
Yeah. It's it definitely makes a difference. With a whole range of things, and I mean, comedy's certainly a good case. If you end up sort of speaking over each other, or any of those things that the latency causes, then the whole thing just falls flat, right? So less than ideal. On the latency front, the numbers that I've been seeing are sort of in the range of 60 to 80 milliseconds for those that are very technically inclined, which is still well below 10th of a second, but it's enough that it impacts certain things like gaming, but it's streets ahead of the sort of old school satellite internet that we used to have, and that's thanks to these low Earth orbit satellites that are sitting about 550 k's away from the Earth. So being so much closer, so that 90% or so closer than the traditional satellites that were used for those in rural locations going back just a few years. Night and day different. And of course, we've got Pacific in the market, who have been providing satellite internet to New Zealand, and they've been providing it from one as far as I'm aware, one single satellite. And here you've got SpaceX, who have put up over 1,500 already, and as you say, Dai, aiming for tens of thousands of them. So it's a big game changer for those that can't. I would say the gap that it fills is those that can't get good fast internet from a local internet service provider in New Zealand, whether it's a wireless internet provider, fixed connection like fiber or VDSL, or in some cases some of the 4G, 5G options. If you're not getting a good result with those, then you want to jump on it. You got to drop about $900 to get into play. and it's 159 a month. So it's more than twice what a lot of people would spend on ultra fast broadband. But this is for those mostly in rural locations that don't have it. So well worth it.
Yeah, and I mean, just on that, that means so much if you're stuck on a rural location. 159's not the worst if that is the difference between your business being able to function and not function.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many aspects where that will really change things for for families, for businesses, and for those that just don't have good connectivity today. So yeah, now let's jump on to the iPhone. Of course, as always, when new announcements are coming from Apple, a large portion of it seems to leak early. One of the leaks that I certainly wasn't buying into, and I think ended up sort of fizzing out even before we got to launch, was the suggestion that the iPhone was going to have satellite connectivity in it, and of course that didn't happen. But what's your take on the announcements, Dai?
Well, I got up. I've always had quite a keen interest in Apple, and I use mainly Apple products. I still have. I like to keep my foot in the Android world, and like to have a Pixel phone sort of going as well to try the Android software and that. But I always get up for the Apple events. I'm loving. I mean, in 2018, it took me back actually in 2018 with my good mate Clayton Carpenter. We flew over to the event in Cupertino and filmed there, and got to go on the campus and into the with the product demo place, and we're sitting in the Steve Jobs Theatre and so forth. And on a couple of counts, that made me sad. One, that I wasn't there, and two, that I wasn't allowed to even go down to the local food court, let alone go over to Cupertino. And I was up early. My son got up to watch it with me. Let's park the products to one side. They nail a keynote, to be honest. Like, visually, from the intro of the California Soul track, the cinematography of it all, they really showed that they're a company with the most money in the world. They really showed that they didn't cut any corners. So visually, I really enjoyed it. As with all Apple products launches, I leave fizzing. Then throughout the day, as I mull through it and I take my rose tinted glasses off and I actually start running use cases of, would I need this? Would I not need this? I'm still I've got iPhone 11. I don't see any need. I think I'll wait till next year to upgrade. The one thing I was quite excited about was the iPad mini, especially for my use case in terms of presenting, in terms of being on set and having something that is clean and a good size. I really enjoyed the fact that they invested in bringing the specs up on that. I was intrigued by the cinematography style thing of the iPhone Pro, 13 Pro and Pro Max. They seem to make this claim that suddenly they've got this vibe, all of a sudden they're going to shoot Avengers Endgame on 400 iPhones. That's not going to happen. Like, I feel they oversell this idea of pros using these iPhones. It's still a prosumer thing. Like, I think.
I don't know. I would challenge that, Dai, because there are people that will go with it. And if you sort of think about, everything's getting faster and faster, right? We need to produce these things faster. We need to get things done faster. And the reality is, it takes quite a long time for technology to get into, all that commercial high end equipment. And I remember we were comparing some of the imagery we're starting to get off our phones with what you could get from, say, a digital SLR. And, you know, it was clear there's a huge sort of, you know, there's a huge gap. So I don't know. I think there are some possibilities. I'm not saying this is like 90% of the industry is going to go to iPhones, but I imagine there will be some use cases. And knowing that you've got a gadget in your pocket, that actually there are, you know, one or two, you know, films that you know get shot on these things. That's pretty satisfying to know you've got access to that sort of quality, you know, in your pocket.
Oh, completely. And that where it stands to your point there is bringing in filming in ProRes, which is sort of, it's such a high-end format that you can then bring into a Final Cut Pro or something, really leans towards making something that's not just going to be distributed through social networks. But I think where it really is hitting in terms of the professional is the TikToker, the Instagram user who, with these cinematic filters where you're not bound by a filter, you're basically creating presets like you would in an Adobe product and then layering them straight on. It means that, as you're saying, these people are carrying something in their pocket, and nowadays there is money to be made on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and then if they're upping their game, that is going to set another level where people who are in the same game go, well, I need to up my production values as well. So carrying something like that is going to be a game changer for people. I don't know in terms of your average consumer how much it's a game changer above even the iPhone 10. I was doing some just photo tests with iPhone 10 I had yesterday, and when you're working with nice lighting and you've got time to do good composition, you can still get an amazing photo from a 3-year-old camera. And even I was comparing that to the Pixel 3, which I've got, which still takes an amazing photo in itself. So I think Apple gets a lot of grief for just having iteration product launches now. Like, you know, there was no new product. I was quite keen on the new EarPods, but they've seemed to have drifted into the abyss. The watch was interesting, but even if you're on a Series 5, I don't see any need to upgrade. I think this is for people who are either working with older, very old Apple products. They're going to see a massive advancement. But yeah, there's not too much that's sort of really jazzing me, and where I see a new market happening, or whether they're actually challenging someone like Facebook with their Ray-Ban photo lenses,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
however you
yeah,
describe them.
yeah. That's
Like
kind of interesting, isn't it?
they're not jumping in. They're not jumping in and challenging anyone. They're not going where Samsung just suddenly got on the psychedelics and went, we're solely folding phones from now on in. They're not sort of stepping out of their wheelhouse, I suppose you'd say.
Yeah, yeah, yep. And I think that's okay. That's what we expect from from Apple, and from others, as there are going to be iterations each year. I think the iterations are good. Apple are like, they're probably the area that I think we should drill into just a little bit. And I know we've got a few other topics we want to cover, but is just the performance of Apple's chips in terms of processing and graphics performance, and how impressive that is. I saw where was the video? I saw a video comparing, and I don't know if this was part of this. Is probably something else that I saw, but it was comparing taking some footage and exporting it on an iPhone versus doing it on a pretty grunty PC, maybe even an Intel Mac, and being able to do that same thing faster on a phone. And really, I think it's pretty impressive, the development that we've seen happen over quite a number of years since Apple spent a few $100 million to get themselves in a position to design and build their own silicon. Well, they outsource the manufacturing side, but they design that stuff. And how that's now coming through in all the new Macs, and I think some of us are really looking forward to seeing what comes next. But I think you're in the same position as me. You've been trying out an M1 based Mac, which I think it was one of the early presentations from Apple, maybe going back to one of the earliest iPhones, where they were talking about desktop class silicon, going into their phones. Well, here we are now. We've got phone chips and most of the Macs now, and the performance of them, it's outstanding, right?
Oh, I was running a late 2018 MacBook Pro, fully spec'd out. And then when the Mac, and I hated the computer mainly because of the keyboard. It was in that butterfly realm. The space bar broke for me. The M key broke, and it's strange that the actual internals are amazing, but just the plastic keys ruined the entire experience for me. So I was looking for a traveling computer, and the MacBook Air, the M1 MacBook Air came out, and I was dubious, to be honest. I was like, oh, do I want to take a jump on a first chip iteration of a computer? And a friend got it. I had a type on the keyboard. The keyboard was amazing. I saw the sort of pace, and then I took a jump. I bought one. My wife got one, and the Photos app's an example for me. I have a lot of photos in the Photos app. I've always found it a bit of a pig, a bit sluggish. And then it was opening with one bounce on the M1. I do a little bit of audio, a little bit of video. I'm by no means putting this through its paces, but for what I need, it flies. And the way it manages its power consumption is a game changer. Like, I'm treating it sort of on the level of how I treat iPads, where I'm not getting that cord anxiety whenever I go and sit on the couch with a laptop. I'm not going, oh, I should set up some plug because I'm gonna need it in an hour. I just sit down and go, oh no, I can bang through a couple of hours easy here.
Oh,
so that is
so.
amazing. The
It's
power,
incredible.
the battery's amazing. So I still have, Apple really do deliver on the hardware side of things, and that M1 line, the M line, I suppose you'd call it, because I don't know what they'll call the iterations of that. When that scales up to being able to use more displays off the chip, when it scales up to sort of, I suppose, doubling it or tripling its capacity, and when they're putting that into huge pro type gear, it's going to be a game changer for people who are rendering and people who are outputting a lot of video. I think it's going to be a game changer. The question, I suppose, will be, will third-party apps be able to keep up? Because often third-party apps, such as your Adobes and that, are where the people are working. Everything works beautifully if you're in my situation where I'm not doing a lot of work and I'm not delivering to a client in a specific format and so forth. I'm just tooling around in Final Cut or Logic, which are Apple-made programs for the Apple silicone. So they work amazingly.
Yeah, no, look, what I've seen is most of the software vendors now come across the large majority of things from Adobe and Microsoft now are native for the M1. And yeah, as you say, I mean, the battery life, I think it's double what it was before. That's what it feels like. And yeah, just looking at how slowly your battery life sort of shrinks when you're on the M1. It's phenomenal. So what we're kind of getting now is that advantage of Apple not just making the hardware, but you could almost compare it to, we talk about Tesla and their vertical integration, that they're controlling so much that goes into their vehicles that makes them so different from everybody else. And with Apple designing the chips that go into their phones, as well as designing the rest of the phone and making the software, and then being able to leverage that right out across their desktop and laptops, tablets. They have now, I think, a very, very powerful ecosystem. Obviously, some changes coming up around App Store and how much money and how much of a cut that they can make there. So I'd be watching and being a bit strategic around investments and Apple shares, considering what that might do to their income. But I think they're only making the whole ecosystem stronger with these moves. So yeah, I think it's a good place to be. And the new phones, yes, it's incremental. They're faster. They've got better battery life. You got a terabyte worth of storage now that can sit in a phone. There's nothing. I don't think there's anything to be upset about. But it's not like we've suddenly got a completely different device. That's certainly not the case at all.
And this is where I sort of wish Google was in a similar position to Apple hardware-wise, where because Apple have this massive market, when they release silicone into the iPhone, into the Mac, it actually is a change, and it sort of is encouraging them to push to the next level and the next level. But sadly, the Pixel phones don't have the uptake as the iPhone does. So then I feel Google gets into this situation where they sort of dip a toe in the water, then pull it back a bit, then are we going to go for it? And then they sort of, between their I suppose their numeral product and their A product, like their 6 and their 6A, or their 4 and their 4A, that they're very hesitant as to whether they're just releasing a sort of middle of the road phone that gives a stock Android experience for Android developers, or whether they're actually trying to push the boundaries with a flagship phone that's got a tensor chip that's this whole other change to it. And I just sort of, I suppose, I wish there was a huge Pixel base of owners, so they were just encouraged to just keep pushing it, because computing and technology is at its best when there's a lot of heavy players in the market, all trying different things and having slightly different angles on the same product.
Yeah, agreed. There's the competition piece is important. The scale is important. Okay, now Amazon, they have. I guess there's a whole lot of technology around that works on capturing biometrics, and you shared with me a link about Amazon partnering with a company around using their technology to allow people to basically scan their palm prints to get through barriers to get into an event. This is the same sort of technology that we've seen in Amazon's automated. Well, it's a little bit different actually, the automated stores, isn't it? Because those aren't using the palm print technology. You just scan your phone to get in, right?
Yeah, you scan your phone and then they sort of do their own in-shop logging of what you're getting, and this I believe you go to a kiosk that's either an Amazon store or in one of these events, and you set up your palm print and you link it to the correct site, so you can have your ticket logged to that. Then you scan in with your palm. I myself, I sometimes find with these things, it's a hammer looking for a nail. Like, there's not that many times. I don't go to a heap of events now. No one's going to a heap of events now. But
not in Auckland.
I don't go to so many events that I go, this actual pulling out my phone and scanning a QR code is really annoying. It'd be so much better if I could just scan my palm. And I get nervous. Biometrics are the one thing you can't change. You can change you can change your password. You can change your two-factor authentication. You can get another YubiKey. You can change those things. You cannot change your palm print. You cannot change your iris scan. You can't change your Face ID. So I'm a bit reticent to be spraying my biometric information around to companies. A caveat on this
Spraying it
is that
around. Love it.
like just sort of, you have my palm, you can have, I'll log on with it. The Amazon do say that this is very private, and they claim that if you delete that account, all of your biometric data from that account is gone. It's not stored with Amazon. My only problem with that is I don't trust Amazon. So I don't have any absolute reason for it. This is a personal thing for me. I wouldn't trust Amazon
You don't
with my
trust big
biometric
tech
data.
companies. You don't trust big tech companies. Is this the same as big tobacco and big pharma? They fall into that same category.
We should get rid of the 180 odd governments around the world and just have 5 tech companies running us all. Yeah, I get, in the early 2000s, I would have been jazzed by this and I would have been doing it straight away. But now I've just found I'm a bit more reticent about putting those things out. For instance, I trust, security wise, I trust Apple. I do trust Google. Granted, I trust Google completely with open eyes as to how they make their revenue through ad targeting and all that. But I think because they do that, they actually they keep your stuff safe. I'm as of yet, I wouldn't trust Amazon with it, and I'm just a bit dubious as to why you'd need this, because carrying a ticket or a QR code doesn't. You're in a line anyway. You've got plenty of time to get your QR code up and scan it.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I think we need to be cautious. Look, the way that data is protected is getting better and better, but we're still seeing just too many issues. And you need to be, as you say, you've only got one chance. Your biometric info goes somewhere, then yeah, it's too late. You can't kind of get a new face too quickly, or a new hand. I mean, you can, and that technology is getting better. But we, I'm not sure what that would look like from a liability perspective for for Amazon. If sorry, we stuffed that up, and we've leaked 1 million handprints or faces. We're gonna generate new ones for you.
And then what if some of those people who had their handprints leaked actually work in sensitive jobs where they are using biometrics to actually access confidential stuff? And I mean, it shows even with these Pegasus attacks on iPhones, with the no-click iMessage virus that was going around and getting onto some journalists' phones. It just shows how in this day and age, you think Apple's a safe company? Well, you can be targeted anywhere. So no, I think you should hold on to that data.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see how that plays. Now, on that front, I see that Cert NZ, who keep a good watch on what's going on cybersecurity wise, and they're the folks that you can report incidents to and so on, have put out their latest report. And one of the areas it's probably not a big surprise is ransomware. Reports are continuing to rise, and of course, not all of these things get reported, but they're very much highlighting the importance of prevention and getting your house in order, lowering your risks to these things up front. And yeah, there seems to be a huge amount of phishing and credential harvesting happening from what they're getting reported, scams and fraud, unauthorized access, and so on. So yeah, that stuff's interesting and worthwhile having a look at to stay on top of things. Now, I was
It's
sort of
just
interested.
on. Oh, sorry, just on that note, I think the best thing I did was a few years ago get on the one password bandwagon. It doesn't matter. I'm not pimping them, but there are other ones like LastPass and so forth. But I got onto that. I got into a good protocol of doing that. I then, wherever I can, added two-factor authentication. And sure, it's a bit of a pain in the ass, but it's become part of my habit now. And it just that's not a magic bullet by any means, but it just gives me a little bit of peace of mind that I think if you can sit down, spend a day just getting a workflow or a protocol to at least defend yourself as well as you can.
Oh, that's great advice, Di. Friend of mine who was just getting ready to announce his band tour, guy Paul Russell, Midwave Breaks, month or so back, and he messaged me and he said, "Oh, I had advice to get multi-factor and get a password management tool in place. Didn't quite get around to it. Facebook account compromised. Now I'm trying to promote my, upcoming tour. I've got, another business that I need to promote, and I'm, basically he's kicked to the curb. So Facebook have come to the party and been helping out. But as soon as you go beyond the basics, what it seems is it's actually really, really hard for these social networks to actually be able to get you back to where you were. So he's
Yeah.
been backwards and forwards with them over weeks. And yes, he's got back into his account and he's got some control, but his ad account, other bits and pieces are still not back in the state that they were originally. So yeah, getting these things right up front, even if you think, I don't have a big business or anything behind me, I just use a bit of social media, this stuff doesn't matter. It really can matter, and of course there are folks that are built their business on top of the likes of Facebook, and this is just looking at those sort of consumer oriented tools without looking at applying the same approaches as we should to business technology systems. So yeah, really important.
Absolutely. And you're saying how it doesn't matter even if you're a small entity. You never know when that's going to take off. You never know when um, you're going to need this sort of back end of some security. And it's pretty easy. I know helping out people, they get a bit overwhelmed and frustrated by passwords and the idea of a password manager and but once you actually now both on Android and iOS, apps like 1Password have pretty seamless integration, even in terms of creating a password for a new site. And I've recently been getting a bit more into crypto and exploring the NFT space and that sort of carry on. And then you're opening up accounts which are actually carrying your hard money in some pretty dubious places. So you need to immediately make sure you have a very strong password that you're not going to lose. And you're going to have to store the backup phrases that they give you, and wherever you can, two-factor authentication, because this potentially could be the slow sea change in currency. And if that is how you're going to be dealing with proper amounts of money, you're going to need to make sure your just protocol and your habits around hefty passwords. Because if you're looking at a crypto wallet, it's not a type my email, forgot my password, click. It's
It's
nah,
gone.
you got no more money.
Yeah. And look, we've heard of that. We've heard of scenarios, huge amounts of money, disappearing because people have lost their credentials, and whilst a lot of that stuff shouldn't even be stored online, at all, not even in a password manager. It's definitely something you should be thinking about. But a good segue into these topics of crypto, because there's been a lot of scamming going on that has been targeting that world. So last week we had news media. I think Reuters were part of this. Mainstream media outlets that picked up basically a fake press release that said Walmart in the US, of course, their biggest retailer, was moving in to accept payments using Litecoin, and suddenly it spiked. I think 30% spike. And it was complete. It was complete rubbish. So, there's these sort of tricks to get people to invest, and then the other things that I've been seeing a lot of is whenever Elon Musk tweets. If you look in the tweet stream, I maybe haven't noticed it on his last couple of tweets, but. So maybe Twitter are fixing something up here, but usually if you scroll through the replies to his tweets, there's a tweet that says it's from Elon Musk. You have to look very carefully at the handle and so on, and oh no, it's not really. But if you just clicking on the links, it sort of is effectively offering you free Bitcoin or something. Send a little bit to this address. I'm going to send a whole lot back. And if you're in a bit of a hurry, you could get pulled into that, and I'm sure that's why these things keep going. And there was after watching the Apple live stream, was it yesterday? I jumped on the TV just to catch the video again and to look at a couple of things. And there were some live streams running, and one of these live streams said it was Apple. It was right next to legitimate Apple content. It was running now. You jumped across to it. There's Tim Cook, and on the left-hand side of the screen, and this thing had thousands of people watching it. So it wasn't that there were just one or two people got sucked into it. And the left-hand side of the screen, was one of these typical sort of crypto scams. Send point.
I saw that.
Yeah, you got it as well. Like it's just, I mean, it's not hidden at all. It's right out there in the public. But these platforms like YouTube and Twitter and so on just completely struggle to deal with it, or they just
I saw that too, and to me, that actually, I ended up on that channel just through the horrificness of YouTube's Apple TV app, just because within the YouTube's Apple TV app, it's quite hard to drill down just to make sure I'm on the Apple, in Apple's page on that. It just, you search sort of Apple and then it brings up, and as you say, there are two or three that actually look like they could be from Apple.
Yeah.
Jumping back to Elon Musk, I think a bit of this falls on, if you get scammed on people saying, give me some money and I'll give you 10 times that money back, good luck to you, mate.
Yeah.
Like this has been happening since people knock on your door with scams selling encyclopedias. Like, there's a certain percentage of the population that falls for this. No one's going to give you free money, especially not on Twitter. The one thing about Elon Musk's Twitter that sort of basically was an initial thing that put me off crypto was how he could tweet and influence the price of Bitcoin by up to 5 to 10%. And when there's companies like El Salvador or so forth that are trying to use this as an actual pseudo fiat currency, it's unviable if someone on Twitter can affect the currency of a nation by 5 to 10% through 180 characters. So I've noticed over the last couple of tweets he's had about Bitcoin, it hasn't been as volatile, but this is something that plays into the Walmart scam as well. Of crypto has a long, long, long way to go before it's actually going to be used by everyday consumers buying everyday items on the internet or investing their hard-earned money on the internet, when someone can release a fake press release and boost a coin by 20%. But I think there are two
Imagine
levels
if
of
that
coins.
happened to the New Zealand dollar, right? You walked into the store to buy a loaf of bread, and the New Zealand dollar had just been devalued 30%, or you went to pay your rent and you got enough money in your account to pay your rent or your mortgage, and they're like, "Oh, sorry, New Zealand dollar just got devalued 30%. I know that you've got an automatic payment here to come through of X $100 or $1,000 or whatever. We actually need to take another 30% this week because things are a bit volatile." And I mean that has happened in the history of the world, but it's pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, and that's why I do believe there are two levels of coin. There are these coin that are all among your Doge and your Litecoin, and they sort of come and they go, where they are about people pumping and dumping and trying to find, you could use another word of scam, sort of way for the coin to go viral for a small amount of time. Because hey, Kanye loves this new thing. Let's all get behind that for a week. And then, they pump it by 20%, then it just dies off. Then there are, I suppose, your more ether Bitcoin type situations that, although they bubble along, they still have these huge fluctuations. So no, I'm pretty bullish on it, but I think it's a long-term proposition. I think things like self-driving cars, cryptocurrency, they're all completely viable and will become a thing. But I think people's initial timelines on these are now blowing out to more 10 to 20 years rather than in the next 5 years.
Yep. All right. Well, we'll leave you with that thought. One last thing before we finish off. There's something happening in the entertainment world. ABBA are reuniting. This virtual tour. What do you think? Is this just a silly thing to generate some money? Is there some genuine good that can come out of what they're doing with basically virtual versions of themselves appearing on stage and so on?
Well, from interest of a technological point of view, it's amazing. Like one of the best concerts I went to was an artist I don't particularly enjoy, Kylie Minogue, and but her actual stage show was technically one of the most amazing things I'd seen, with 7 floating stages that changed with huge set changes and sort of the use of light and holograms to completely twist your perspective. I love this sort of thing because it is a reason to bring people out into meet space to see things. I'm not a big ABBA fan. I'm not knocking anyone who loves ABBA. Music is music. People are into different things, but for me, it's not really floating my boat. But there's, who knows, things like this just open the door, and they are a diving board for other acts to jump off and do crazy things with. I'd probably like to see a band more like the Flaming Lips or someone like that who really like to take something technologically and make it extremely quirky. That would probably be a bit more down my alley. But hey, there's going to be a lot of people in RSAs trying to get their head around this. That's for sure.
Love it. Oh well, very nice to have you back on the show, Dai. Always a
Thanks, Paul.
pleasure. And most people just don't realize how well studied you are on what's going on in the tech world. So it's always fun to delve in and kick some of the topics around. So thanks very much. Encourage
anytime, and to everyone out there, stay safe and keep a smile on your face in these trying times.
Thanks, Dai. Now, tours and events you've been involved in have, largely been cancelled, from what I understand.
We're currently looking at releasing new tour dates for the end of the year. On Wednesday for a 7 days tour, we're sort of trying to play a bit of Russian roulette onto what's going to happen, but we will be releasing tickets next Wednesday for an upcoming tour. So go to 7dayslive.info. It'll all be up there from next Wednesday. And of course, in this current climate, if you buy a ticket, it's completely refundable if anything happens. And you can either take a postponement or your money back, because you've got to look after those dollars and cents these days.
Excellent. Oh, thanks, Dai. And of course, folks can follow you across on Twitter and Facebook as well. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We'll be back again with the NZ Tech podcast again next week. So we'll look forward to catching you then. And thanks again, Dai, for joining us and sharing some of your time. And we'll let you get back to your lockdown and whatever Zoom and other things you've got lined up for your day. So thanks again.
Cheers.